And well, welcome everybody. It says we're live. I'm going to look up to the corner there, and it says live. We're like 7, 8, 9 seconds into this, and I want to welcome everybody back to Paranormal Now. We have been like vacant. We have been absent. That's the better word, and vacant. And we've been absent from this process for a couple of months. We had a spring and a summer that was just crazy. A lot of great things have happened, and there's been some changes, as you can tell, and some different things going on. And thanks for coming back and joining me here on Paranormal Now. I've got a guest with me, Michelle Freed, as you know, who has provided guests with us. Michelle has, been with me at Ghostorama. Many of you who watch this program also have met Michelle. She's wonderful people, does remote viewing classes, sessions, and I've been begging her and begging her to come on. Now, she's done other podcasts, but she's been giving me the runaround. I don't know if she thinks I'm a hard interview or what, but we'll get her on here at some point in time. But I wanted to thank Henderson Castle before we get started. HendersonCastle.com. It's an 1895 bed and breakfast right here in downtown Kalamazoo. You can come there for once a month haunted dinner tours, hosted by yours truly. And on occasion, my wife, Mama Cat, joins me. So Big Dog Mama Cat be there. And we tell you about the Hendersons, and it's wonderful. So go to HendersonCastle.com. Great supporter of this program and the network as well. I want to remind everybody of Ghostorama's coming up. So Ghostorama of 2024, the first one will be May 11th. That's at the Bell Mansion. We all know where that's at in Fort Wayne, Indiana. That's May 11th. So go to their site, go to bellmansion.com, and you'll be able to get more, information about what's going on there. So they're presenting Ghostorama, and we're going to have a good time. June 15th, 2024, Ghostorama will be at La Ferme in Kalamazoo, formerly the Beacon Club, has a Potawatomi history and many other things attached to it. So keep all those things in mind. I'm going to keep bringing them up. I do shameful tags the whole time I'm doing this show. But let's get to our guest. I really wanted to read this because after reading it, I thought it was such a great way to bring you in. Our guest with us tonight is VICKI Joy Anderson. And basically what it says is you wake up in a pitch black bedroom, right? You cannot move. A nefarious black shadow begins to walk slowly, ominously toward the bed. You try to scream, but nothing comes out. Has this ever happened to you? I'm just gonna leave it there, only because I have met so many people in this field, VICKI, who that's how they got started in the paranormal, including one of my best friends, Bob Penny. And you wrote a book, and I read some excerpts out of the book just to give me a taste of. I couldn't read the whole book tonight in like an hour. If I could do that, right? Let me back up. First of all, everybody welcome VICKI Joy to the program. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
And the book, as you see down there, it's They Only Come Out at Night. And it's an exploration into this sleep paralysis thing that you think. I love your choice of words because you used the word exposing the dark weapon of sleep paralysis. So, yeah, I think the first question is, I'll back up on that question. Let's start with the first because we got a list here, and I like to stick to the list.
Okay.
That way, I'm not bouncing all over the place like I already am. Why did you write this book?
Yeah, I never intended to. It was something that I went through for 47 years, off and on. And my experiences weren't as intense or frightening as others that I've heard. Mine was more just the frequency of them made them very exhausting. It became a form of harassment. It was night after night. And then it would go away for a few months, but it would come back and things like that. So it was something I suffered from my entire life. And I thought it was just bad dreams or stress or trauma or whatever. And I tried to talk about it one time in high school to a friend of mine. And she came back to school on Monday saying she'd talked to her mother and I should go to a Catholic priest and get an exorcism. And I thought, okay, I'm not talking about this anymore. So I thought it was just something that was happening to me. And about in my mid 30s, I was listening to a podcast and they started describing it
Sorry,
And,
trying to turn that TV off. Go ahead.
oh, that's okay. I was listening to a podcast and someone started explaining this scenario, and I could not believe someone else knew what this was.
Right.
And then they said, this is sleep paralysis. And I was like, you've got to be kidding. And so it was sort of the infancy of the internet. I don't think Google was around yet. So you had to kind of find message boards, and it was harder to find things. But I started doing searches for sleep paralysis, and I found all these message boards and found that hundreds of other people were going through the same exact thing. And it blew my mind that this was a phenomenon and not just something happening to me. And maybe I wasn't crazy after all.
You're not. Mine happened in I would have to say around 86, 87. And my experience was similar, but yet different. And you're right. There was nowhere to go. There was no internet. And what computers we had, you had a Wang 2000, which is the size of a Zenith color TV, and that's all you had to go to. And so went to library and I read up on it because it did worry me, the experience. And the experience, I can speak as, I guess, a survivor of that, because I don't think that I've had it. I have not had it since. Because I know that some of the other things that have happened afterwards were due to some medical things I have going on currently. But back then, this was not medical. And what I saw scared the living hell out of me. And you're right. It's a traumatization that you don't get over, you don't forget. And I still, to this day, I wouldn't say that I have to find a safe place. I'm just saying that I remember it like very clearly, like it just happened last week, if not yesterday,
Yeah.
And you're right. And looking into it, I was amazed at how many people were out there, at least at that time, in some book form, and which, science and people were laughing at a lot of it. They don't laugh at it anymore. And it's now a thing where now they do sleep studies and everything else. So,
yeah.
But it's a real thing. And I think you're right. That you went looking for answers. I'd still like answers, because all I saw, I don't know. I always get flapping my lips, Vicki. I apologize, but
That's okay.
But what I saw, maybe this sounds familiar to you. So what I saw was, I went to bed. I was wide awake. That's the weird part. I had not gone to sleep yet, and I was talking to my wife, my first wife at the time, and I looked up and I felt as if somebody was pushing me down on the bed. It was very oppressive, and what I saw come out of the ceiling was this winged thing. And all I can attribute to is at that time when you were doing any kind of 3D computer drawing, it was almost looked like you were making something out of wire. I don't know if that makes any sense. Very rudimentary. It was red. It had a box for a body, a head of a dragon, had wings like a dragon, and it had wheels on each side of the box. And a long tail, and it came down, and as it came closer and closer down over me, I felt more and more pushed into the bed, almost as if I couldn't breathe. And she asked what was wrong, and I asked her if she saw it, and you didn't see that. And it swooped up. The minute that she sat up, it swooped up and went into the ceiling. And I mean, I'm not a guy that gets scared a lot. I don't, but I mean, that scared me a little. That shocked me. So that's my experience. Uh-oh. Your mic is out.
Okay.
There it is.
Okay. There were some interesting elements in your story. Not everybody talks about the dragons or the winged creatures, but they do show up in some people's stories. The wheel aspect, I don't hear that very often, and that's very fascinating, because Ezekiel's vision in Ezekiel chapter 1, when the Merkava vision came down from the dimensional space. Some people say that this is an angel. Some people say that it's a UFO. This is where the UFO is mentioned in scripture. But what it's actually talking about is this Merkava. It's this cortege, so to speak, the throne room of Yahweh is put on this wheeled item. And there's many references in scripture when you start talking about theophanies, where the portal, the method of transportation is wheels within wheels. And I've even just recently seen some social media posts of people who've taken photographs of certain star clusters, etc., and it looks like these wheels within wheels. And so
Right.
Whenever I hear people talking about the wheels, that is biblical metaphor for angelic or interdimensional travel.
Okay. I feel lucky because I survived it, and I've had a lot of blessed things in my life, but that did scare the living crap out of me. Um,
Indeed.
I guess is sleep paralysis, do you think it's a medical condition, a mental illness, or a spiritual encounter? Now, you just mentioned some spirituality, well, based on some religion. And I wanted to mention too that you are well versed in that, because that's something that you studied, which was um, at St. Paul, Minnesota, right? Majoring in Bible and English.
Yep.
So, this lady knows what she's talking about. So everybody feel your ear and listen.
Yeah.
So what do you think it is?
So I make a point very early in the book that medicine and mysticism have kind of underwent this divorce. They don't want to talk to each other.
Right.
And I kind of make this crack in the book that it's like that old Reese's peanut butter cup commercial, like, hey, you got your chocolate, my peanut butter.
Right.
And the scientists and the medical professionals, they don't want a bunch of woo in their study. They don't want a bunch of, supernatural stuff. And really, the church doesn't want supernatural stuff anymore either. We've become a very scientific method society. And so it's hard for us to fully understand these things if we are going to compartmentalize experiences like this and feel like we can only put it into one category. I do believe that there are physiological aspects to this phenomenon. I think that there's actually genetic components to this aspect, the same as with the UFO abductions. When you're talking about cloning programs and medical procedures, they're after a particular bloodline. They're after a particular genetic. There's something genetic there. And there are people that would have all of the same things going on as me, all of the planets align. It looks like the MO for someone that would experience a sleep paralysis abduction or a UFO abduction.
Right.
But they don't get abducted. They don't have these experiences. And why not? And I think in some cases it's genetic. You're not what they're looking for, So I'm not one of these people that just because I, have a background in theological aspects, I'm not one of these people that thinks every single thing is something demonic. Every single thing is something spiritual. Every single thing is happening to you because you were a sinner. Like the world is too complicated. Our bodies are too complicated. There are a lot of physiological things going on as well. And there's obviously something physical to this too, because I'm sure, as you know, Dan, all of the aspects of sleep paralysis can be reproduced in a laboratory now. They have they have technology. They can probe certain parts of the brain and you can see a shadow person. And there's anesthetic drugs like succinylcholine that 100% mimics a sleep paralysis experience. You can't move. You feel like you're being crushed and you can't breathe. So there's nothing mystical in that. When we're in altered phases of sleep, as we're going in and out of sleep in various states of altered consciousness, it is very common to not be able to move and to have some panic there. So sometimes I think that we can over sensationalize things, but I also think that we're doing a huge disservice to the people who suffer from this if we gaslight them and say, you had this slice of pizza before you went to bed, you have, some sort of narcolepsy. When people are telling you that entities are showing up in their room, threatening to drag them to hell, and hundreds of people are experiencing this, at some point, we need to put the case studies aside and listen to the people that have actually experienced it. And if they are all saying things like, this is evil, this is demonic, I felt like my soul was in jeopardy. I've heard atheists talk this way. I've heard agnostics talk this way. The Catholics, the Christians, this isn't religious terminology. I know every time you hear demon or hell or soul, people just automatically put that into a religious category. But I'm telling you that everybody who I've talked to and it's been over a vast spectrum of religious or anti-religious beliefs. They start using religious terminology to explain this. They start saying, I saw a demon. I felt like I was being dragged to hell. I have had agnostic people tell me that they innately cry out to the name of Jesus, or they start quoting the 23rd Psalm. So we can't just, regardless of our own particular religious persuasion, I think we're doing a disservice to the study of this and to figuring this out. If every time something starts to sound a little bit religious, we think that someone's trying to turn us into a Christian, and so we shut them down.
Right.
This doesn't have anything to do with Christianity. It has to do with, why does everyone that experienced this say that it was a terror beyond anything that they'd ever experienced in waking life, and they felt that their soul was in jeopardy?
Yeah. Severe cases. Yeah, exactly. And I've read quite a few, and I've interviewed people on this program who've talked about that. We've speculated, obviously it interjects with paranormal activity, because we hear so many stories of people relaying that to me. Rusty Jones is here from Central Michigan Paranormal Investigations. He just brought that up too, that, yeah, we hear that all the time. But I'm glad you said what you said, because I feel that I'm very open about what I say and what I feel. And I've always said to myself, I feel like I guess I'm a soldier of God in a sense, that I'm a believer. I think obviously we came from a higher power. I believe in God. I believe in Jesus. And I guess if some people don't like that, oh, well, but I'm also okay. I'm also okay with people being, doing the Wiccan thing, or whatever you want to do, whatever you feel for you is working for you. Okay. As long as you're not making any harm, causing any harm, making any harm, causing any harm. You know where I'm going with this, hopefully.
Yep.
Is that you're right. It transcendentally crosses so many lines when this experience happens. And it was nice to hear you say that. I had thought that for the longest time, but I'm not an expert in it. I think you are, because you wrote a book about it. And I think too, the demon, you touched on something there, which I might as well hit on that point too, that there's a lot of times we cut people off immediately when we're interviewing them. That's like, listen, before we start throwing that word around, we got to look at your background, how you were brought up. We need to look at this neutrally before we start making any presumptions on anything that's going on. And a lot of what I like to say in media and books and things over the years, including religion, people are going to send me hate mail over this. I've never liked the D word to begin with, because it's semantics to me. A lot of words were invented and created, obviously, to explain a process or something that was happening to people at that time, and they didn't know any better. Because if you look at the explanation of hell and Hades, it is completely, not vastly different, but it's different. And, it goes along the lines, I think, with demons and evil entities too, because my next question, which is not on here, would be, do you think sometimes too, maybe this is a parallel intrusion? Do you think that there's parallel universe that sometimes causes the shadow people? That's who they are. They cause this sleep paralysis on occasion without really intending to mean harm, but they do.
Yeah. So we can talk about intentionality and motive in a second, but to answer the first part of the question, the easier part of the question, I personally believe that the sleep paralysis episode is an interdimensional astral episode. Yep. I do not believe, and I'm drawing this from personal experience, and then I've also been interviewing my case studies to see if it's their experience. If it's only happened to you once or twice, it's hard to observe, because when you're in terror and you're just trying to wake yourself up, you're not observing casually what's going on. And when this happens to you hundreds and hundreds of times over the course of 40 years, you start to question things, investigate things, and then you start to test your hypotheses as these episodes recur.
As you should. Yeah, correct.
Yes. And so what someone will tell you, or the official narrative online, is sleep paralysis is when you wake up in your bedroom and you can't move. So the assumption is already that you are in your bedroom. And everyone argues with me on this, and that's fine. But here's the problem. What I have noticed is every time I have sleep paralysis and I'm looking at my bedroom, there's a glitch. There's something inaccurate in the landscape. There's a window that's not really in my room. The headboard isn't really my headboard. There's full-length mirrors hanging up and down the wall that's not there. There's a bookshelf that is on the wrong wall. There's always one glitch. And that indicates to me that I'm not really looking at my bedroom. And it was fascinating to me the very first time I saw the black cat scene in the Matrix, and they called it the glitch in the Matrix. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's like sleep paralysis. There's always a glitch in my bedroom. And another thing that they don't tell you online, it's not part of the official narrative. For me, sleep paralysis always started deep within an REM cycle. It started where a normal dream I was having, turned sinister. It would go black. All of the nice people in the dream would leave. A door would open. The sleep paralysis experience for me always began in the REM dream cycle. And I would wake up terrified, and then I would have this sleep paralysis experience. And what took me years to figure out is that the nightmare that I had was connected to. So the sleep paralysis experience isn't necessarily those 5-10 minutes in your bedroom. I believe the 5-10 minutes in the bedroom is the tail end of an astral abduction. And you don't have a memory necessarily of what happened in that dream. A lot of people wake up and they don't remember what they've dreamed, but our body is showing all of the signs of fight or flight. The adrenaline is pumping, the heart is beating, all the saliva in our mouth is dried up, our back is arched. A lot of times we're in defensive positions in our bed where it looks like we had been fighting something off. Our body is doing everything in its power to tell us something just happened. And the clever thing about the astral abductions in let's contrast to the UFO abductions, is that when UFO abductees come back and they tell their stories, they say, I saw a bright light, something to that effect, and I have no idea what happened to me, but I know there's time missing because now the sun is gone. You know, I was driving in the daytime, or the clock is different, or I'm 100 miles down the road. And so they don't know what happened. They don't remember what happened, but they know something must have happened because of missing time. What is diabolical about the astral abductions is that when we wake up, we never question where the time went because we've been to sleep and we're used to going to sleep 5, 6, 7, 8 hours. So they are able to operate under this cover of smoke and mirrors where you're going to wake up. You're always going to chalk it off to a bad dream. You're not going to remember the dream. That's not going to seem unusual. You're not ever going to question the missing time because we go to bed for hours at a time. And so we then go and we talk to a professional of our choice, whether that's a priest, a pastor, or a doctor. And all of them are programmed to tell us it was a bad dream, it's stress, try some breathing exercises, meditate, do yoga, whatever. And that and we can talk about they are able to operate under complete covertness because we are never going to question that something more happened than just we saw a spooky shadow man in our room.
And I think something more does happen. You're right. And that's refreshing to listen to you. I'm getting a great education, and you're crossing T's and dotting I's for me. So even though I just said that I hadn't had another episode, you had just reminded me of a reoccurring dream that's exactly how it went down. And it has to do with paranormal and the spirit. I went into this house 3-4 times. I had this dream over and over. I was in pretty much a little bit of mortal fear when I went into the house. I recognized the house. I'd been in this house many times when I was younger, so I know where the house used to be. And I'd only been in the house once or twice, but I mean, I saw every detail reenacted in each of these dream cycles. And then it became to a point where the spirit in the house wanted me out, and it was picking me up and it was pushing me against the wall and it was tossing me around. And I was a little frightened out of my wits that it was able to do that, but I didn't know what else to do. But then to keep going back in there to show it that you have no control over me. And I was going to continue to do what I had to do. And what you just explained coming out of that, I was mortified for days, telling some friends in paranormal about that. And I'd had another one where I went in, there was a house, and I've yet to experience this house, but it's the same type of scenario where I don't know. I had all the after effects you just described, and I know it was real. I feel that there was an intrusion. Missing time has happened to me. I had June Lundgren on, and June, is in parts of those processes and men stare at goats and all that stuff, and abductions and I'd had a couple of those happen to me too. So you're speaking along a lot of lines that touch base with me. They really they resonate a bell,
Yeah.
so to speak, with me
Yeah.
for sure. You've covered a couple of the questions. I didn't even have to ask him. You just rolled right into them. So that's
Love it.
good. That's good. Because you talked about the testimonies that were referenced in your book. I wanted to talk about maybe a sexual aspect of this because, we've encountered that in paranormal too, where people have swore they've been touched inappropriately, among some other things. Where's that come in connection?
Yeah. So I think one of the reasons why we haven't really been able to have intellectually honest discussions about sleep paralysis until now is because so many people that experience this, it is sexual. Sometimes it's minor,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes it's really severe, all the way to an actual consummation. And because people in the past wouldn't talk about that sort of stuff out loud, not just because of the paranormal aspect alone, but just because we're coming out of a very prudish coming out of the Victorian era culture where we didn't talk about that stuff out loud. There were certain taboo sexual things we didn't talk about, and now we live in this culture where everybody talks about it. There's kind of no shame in anything. And so now that we're able to talk openly about every single thing, more people are able to share the real story. So this will happen with me a lot, and you'll see this online as well. Everyone will always tell. Now people are willing to tell you, I woke up, I couldn't move, I saw a shadow person, I saw glowing red eyes, and I saw a UFO, I saw a little green man. But once I get in like 3 or 4 interviews in and I'm talking to someone, and once they feel comfortable and they feel that they're starting to understand what's happening to them, and they start to trust me, inevitably 4 or 5 phone calls in, it'll turn into, okay, I haven't told you everything. And then the sexual stuff will come out because it's not the part that people want to talk about. Now we live in a culture where that's what everybody wants to hear about. And so people start to feel more comfortable now talking about that aspect. And so, yes, for a lot of people, it is sexual. People have heard about the incubus and the succubus. That's kind of our modern name for it. But through the ages, they were called different things. If you go all the way back into like antediluvian times, like way back to Sumerian tablets and Akkadian and Mesopotamian and Babylonian, they were actually the Lamia, the vampiric Lamia, the Lamashtu. You've heard of the Lilith. Most people have heard of the Lilith. The screech owl is what it's called in Isaiah. It is actually in scripture. So if there's old school Christians out there saying we should only be talking about Jesus, the screech owl is in the book of Isaiah. And if you actually do the etymology on that Hebrew word, it will actually tell you that it is a demonic, vampiric female entity. And so it's a very real thing. I have a whole chapter in my book called Threshold Covenants and Astral Vampires. And that's kind of the chapter that everybody likes to like fast forward right to. But these things are very vampiric. And I do believe that where Bram Stoker and all of our modern Hollywood stories about vampires, they're caricaturized, they're romanticized, but they are a caricature of a very real entity that has been written about since the beginning of time. And there are these night creatures that come out, they stalk at the doorway, and the doorway is a very important piece of, if I was going to say that sleep paralysis is a story, I would say that the threshold is one of the main characters in the story. Kind of like in Lord of the Rings, they say the ring is an actual character. It isn't just like one of the props. The threshold is very important here. And a lot of people that talk about sleep paralysis or UFO abduction, or even when you look at portals and things like that. We're talking about liminal spaces, the angels coming down on mountaintops, Moses meeting with Jehovah on a mountaintop, Satan taking Jesus to the pinnacle of a mountain and showing him the kingdoms of the world, sleep paralysis entities coming to the doorway, the UFOs coming to the window. These are all liminal spaces. And this gets into the whole mythology of a vampire cannot hurt you unless you give it invitation over the threshold of your house. And this is a very real thing. It's been fictionalized greatly, but we're not talking about a guy in a cape who wants to suck your blood. You know, he wants to, it's the life force he wants. Blood is just the symbol. And so this is why people say, I felt like my soul was in jeopardy, because this entity is seeking the life force, or as Robert Monroe would say, the loosh. He's drawing out the loosh. And so when the invitation is given over the threshold, this is why so many of these sleep paralysis episodes begin by seeing the shadow person at the door. Now, sometimes you wake up and something's already on you, or it's up on the corner of the ceiling. But if you even do just a basic Google image search, if you say shadow man sleep paralysis and hit Google Images, I'd say about 7 out of every 10 artists' rendition, like drawing or painting of a sleep paralysis shadow man, he's by a bedroom door. And why is that? The threshold. And this also goes all the way back into antiquity, all the way up into the mid 1800s, all over the world, in every culture and every religion, they would have threshold covenants. They were hospitality covenants, and they were betrothal covenants. And we still have vestiges of this in our own culture, carrying the bride over the threshold.
Over the threshold of the house. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was because if she accidentally tripped or stomped on the threshold and offended the deity of the home, she could be attacked, right? And so it's a protection. I'm going to carry her over the threshold so that she doesn't anger the god of the home.
Which begs the question of so many people sharing living quarters, moving in and out of a house, and generation after generation, unless one has lived there the longest. You know what I mean?
Yes.
There's a question in there that's kind of begging to be asked, which is that, I live in this house. It was built in 1950. I see things in here all the time. So, and there's been probably 3 or 4 or maybe a half dozen people who have rented this house and lived here. I'm just one of many. So you're right. You definitely have touched on that. Rusty did have a question. I posted up here. He says, so I have a strange question. Could someone that travels or practices the astral plane as they practice, could they actually see what you're seeing during a sleep paralysis episode?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I do think that many people who sleep paralysis, I talk about this at length in the book. Sleep paralysis is the bus stop. Okay. You're standing at the bus stop. This is like phase 1. And if a sleep paralysis episode is not interrupted, and it can be interrupted by being woke up, jarred awake, your alarm goes off, someone wakes you up, people freak out, they get scared, they wiggle their toes, they cry out, Jesus, whatever. If a sleep paralysis episode goes uninterrupted, it will escalate into an out of body. It will escalate into an astral projection situation. Now, a lot of people can't differentiate a dream from an astral scenario. A lot of people don't remember their dreams, and a lot of people don't analyze or give any thought to their dreams. They just chalk them off. And you were talking about this earlier. You hit upon something, Dan. I'm glad that we can bring this up again. You talked about a reoccurring dream. Mm-hmm. And so I just want to give a couple of pointers to people who like, well, how do I know if I'm in the astral realm or not? Because the astral realm isn't necessarily going to look like you think it is, like it's going to be an acid trip from the 60s with colors. Like it's not all astral experiences are an ayahuasca trip, where
right.
You hear Pink Floyd in the background.
You could be so lucky. You could be so lucky.
Oh, if only, right? Sometimes it's just a normal dream, and they're not always scary. That sometimes they seem very, normal. So my experience is the way I can usually differentiate a dream from an astral experience is the astral ones. They're often the reoccurring dreams. You're in the same damn shopping mall for the 100th time, trying to find that door out. You're in the same parking lot, trying to find your car. You're in the same house you grew up in. or you're in some place that you've never been in, but you could draw a picture down to the color of the carpet, threads that are being pulled up, the sconces on the wall, where the staircase is, like extreme detail. A lot of time, my astral dreams, there are tons of people in the dream. There's crowds a lot of times. Other things is Robert Monroe talks about this. If you have a reoccurring dream that you are in a parking lot or a parking ramp and you can't find your car, this was revolutionary to me because I've had this reoccurring dream even since before I could drive.
I just had something like that last week, so I
Yep.
can't wait to hear this. Yeah.
Well, so we know that our brain takes concepts and puts pictures to them, and you know that's how it communicates.
Right.
When we are in the astral realm and we are trying to get our spirit back into our body, we're trying to get, find the silver cord back into the body. We're in this almost state of panic, like I got to get back in my body, and desperately searching for your car is a metaphor or a word picture of that. Where's my vehicle? Where's my vessel? I can't find my car. I'm stuck here. I'm trapped here. If I don't get my car, I won't get home. It's a perfect word picture. And I think that that's in book 3 of Monroe's Journeys trilogy. And when I read that, it blew my mind because I've had that dream hundreds of times. And so a lot of times these astral dreams, there will be certain I call them Alice in Wonderland elements. Because I believe that there are covenants, there are threshold covenants involved here, and there's covenanting involved. There are certain symbols of covenants. So we've all had those dreams where someone is imploring us with vigor to eat or drink something. No, eat it. It's great. No, come on. And this is hilarious. Dan, I had this dream the other day where I was at a wedding reception, and 2 or 3 women were trying to get me to try the cake because it was so good. And I'm like, no, I can't. I'm gluten-free. I'll bloat up like a pig, right? And they're like, you gotta try it. You gotta try it. And so sort of out of, shame, because it was getting ridiculous, I took a bite and then I kind of turned around and threw it away. But anytime you are being implored to eat or drink something, tea, wine, milk, especially, if you're at some sort of ceremony or a wedding, it doesn't even have to be that consistent of a betrothal metaphor, though. I actually try to look at, there's 3 aspects of a Semitic wedding ceremony, a betrothal. Like if you're going to get betrothed in a Semitic culture, there's the 3 C's. There's a covenanting, and that is when the father and the son-in-law sign the ketubah. It's the wedding contract.
Yep.
And then anywhere from X to 7 years later, there's the actual consummation of the wedding. So even though you're married, once that ketubah is signed, the marriage isn't actually consummated until the guy goes out and gets a respectable job and builds a house and can support the wife.
Right.
So part 2 is the consummation, which is, the honeymoon, that's the good part, right? And then there's the celebration when the family comes and they have the big, the wedding reception. And when you're dealing with the astral realm and you wake up and you're evaluating a dream, what I always try to do to test to see whether or not this was just a dream or was it an astral experience is, was there anything in these dreams that bore any semblance of a contract, an agreement, a covenant, an oath, a promise, an agreement? Is there anything that was a consummation? Now, this doesn't have to be a literal sexual consummation. There can be other ways that it's represented metaphorically. But this kind of going back to your original question, Dan, this is why there is so much sex involved with these sleep paralysis experiences. They're consummating a contract that you may or may not have remembered getting into an agreement with. And this is why so many people who have these sleep paralysis experiences wake up in the physical realm then and have paranormal experiences in their home, because they have given that vampiric invitation, and it has been consummated. And the celebration isn't so much that we're celebrating; it is that these things that we have covenanted with they now have free reign. They're the ones that are getting to take full advantage of the celebration aspect. But that is why there's so much sexual encounters involved with this stuff. It's a literal consummation of, I believe, covenants that are being made in the astral realm.
Man, craziness. Hey, we're going to take our first break. I want everybody to hang with us. Okay. Our guest with us is Vicki Joy Anderson. And I'm sure you're learning a lot of information just as I am. She's putting my mind at ease about some things that I've experienced. I have some more things to throw at her, so to speak, when we come back. So, everybody, this is our version of a break. We're still here in the studio. But I want to remind you that, again, our sponsor and supporter of this program, as always, and the unrestrictedparanormal.com network. You can see this program there. You can also see us right here on YouTube. That's where you're watching us right now. That's Henderson Castle, hendersoncastle.com. 1895 bed and breakfast built by Frank and Mary Henderson. You can book once a month the haunted ghost dinner tours with yours truly. And it's a lot of fun. Go to hendersoncastle.com. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Gun Barrel Coffee. Gun Barrel Coffee, it's a damn good coffee. It's roasted and owned by veterans out of Batavia, Illinois, and they make some great coffee. Proceeds of sales on their online shop always go to help out veterans and different organizations of veterans. So please support our veterans. That's why you're free today. Wasn't free. This was paid for by somebody else. So, Gun Barrel Coffee. Also, I wanted to mention Ghostorama again at the Bell Mansion, May 11th. Okay, that's 2024. So if you go over to thebellmansion.com, you can get yourself some more information about that. And if you want a vendor there, same thing, go there, hit them up. They'll give you all the info you need to know. June 15th, 2024 is Ghostorama at La Ferme, which means the farm, formerly the Beacon Club here in Kalamazoo, Michigan /Portage. And it's got Potawatomi ties to it and all sorts of interesting stories that surround not only the property, but property behind it. And it's a paranormal, all those are Ghostorama, folks, is a paranormal meet and greet. It's so that paranormal groups can get together and talk instead of fight. And we have all this drama that goes on. It still goes on. I'm 60 years old and I'm still watching it take place, 12, 13 years into this with my group, 22 years involved in it as a whole. It's never stopped. You belong to a chess club, there's going to be drama. I don't care if you belong to a knitting club, those ladies will fight with each other too. So it's the world, man. It's the way it is. But we try to make a difference. We have a car show attached to these, which we usually can bring out the Mach 5. So those of you who remember Speed Racer, I know the guy who owns the actual Mach 5. We have the Mystery Machine from Scooby-Doo, two of them that we can bring out. If you wanted one or the other or both, hey, we can try to make it happen. You'll see my Ecto, which is an Ecto Jeep Commander. I've built 7 of these, and my Ghostbusters will be there, the Coalition, Great Lakes Ghostbuster Coalition. Go check them out on Facebook. We have 17 groups involved. There's about 300 of us. And what we do through our love of Ghostbusters, as you see my suit back there, is we visit children in the hospital. We escort the kids to burn camp every summer and try to raise money and awareness for autism. Anything that we can do where kids are involved, their families are involved, we're there. We have a special needs program where we get those kids involved. Some of them start out very subdued, very inward, and you would never know it now because they're wearing Ghostbuster suits, marching with their family, they're hugging people, they're screaming at people, and we change lives through this silly little thing called Ghostbusters. Isn't that crazy? So thank you for letting me do that during the break. And you're watching us on YouTube through StreamYard. I love StreamYard. It does a great job for the podcast out here. And we took a spring-summer break. A lot has changed. As you see, I'm back solo. I do wish my ex-partner, Crystal, the best. She decided she was going to move to Arizona. And if she sees this, then she knows I love her dearly. And I will talk to her, may have to talk to her about coming back on board at some point in time. But we've made some changes, and we're going to go forward. And my group to date has done 309 investigations since 2008. And it's incredibly insane, Vicki. I got looking at my file cabinet yesterday, and I just added some more files, to some recent things that we've done. And I just like, oh my God, it's just, I looked at a rack of CDs that I haven't even looked at all the evidence yet.
Ooh.
So it's, there's still stuff to see. I may have things on there I don't even know. I know that we've gone through all the audio, so we can at least say that. But I enjoy this work. I feel that, like with this program and speaking with people like Vicki, that we're trying to educate people and get the word out about things that she's passionate about. Now, are you still doing the speaking circuit?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. In fact, I'm on the road now. You can see I'm in a hotel room, and
I noticed. That's why I asked. I was
yeah.
like, I didn't want to say, hey, are you living in a hotel? Or because I could see the air conditioner and the bed.
That's right.
And I'm like,
please buy my book. I'm broke. Yeah. No.
Please buy her book.
Yeah. No, I was actually out in Denver
Wow.
shooting an episode of Beyond Belief with our buddy George Norrie. So that's kind of why I'm on the West Coast now. And
you are awesome. Yeah.
It was so much fun. He was great. And so, yeah, and I did a few conferences this year. I've got one lined up in April and May of next year so far. And
when you come to Michigan?
Hey, anytime I get an invite, I'm a Minnesota girl, so I always like it when I can
close,
get back up.
Yeah. I'm in Kalamazoo. You know where that is? In between Chicago and Detroit. So
yeah,
I'm easy to get to, and we'll stay in touch. Let's put it that way. We'll stay in touch because, my budget is basically the inside of my pockets. That's my budget. But as it goes, like with Michelle, if anybody wants to come over and speak, or maybe we put on some other type of thing, I'm always happy to do so. I'd love to have you over here. So let's get back to what we were talking about, and you explained a couple of the dreams, which I feel had sleep paralysis involved in them, which I may or may not have known, but it sounds like it did, because at least the house one I described to you, I realized I woke up and I didn't have pressure, but I felt, like I laid in bed and I looked around just to make sure I was back in my bed. I was not in that house. My wife asked me what was wrong. And you mentioned the car thing, and I've had that recently, along with, and drives my wife's insane, Vicki. I tell her, I said, I had this dream where we were trying to locate my car, and every time we found the car and we went to drive it, it turned into something different, something smaller, like a little bicycle or a little motorcycle or something that was not my car all of a sudden. And then I was frantic because I couldn't find my car. And then there's another dream where I'm seeing these houses, and we have moved there, and I've never seen these houses before. And I'm seeing the interior. It's like I can smell being at the house. Does that make sense to you?
Oh, totally.
I smell being at the house, like if they're burning, like one was like Halloween season, like fall season. I could smell what was going on, and I knew the people that were living in the house, and I was going to go there and live with them. It's just weird stuff. And I wake up and I feel like somebody's in the room just for a second or two, and then they're not.
Yeah. This is one thing that doesn't get enough traction online. Everybody wants to talk about the actual experience, and oh man, that was really creepy. And we all have our campfire stories that we know are going to be get all the goosebumps going at the next get together, right? But what we don't talk enough about is that anything spiritual, ritual, paranormal, occult, there's always a closing out. So on a Ouija board, it says goodbye. Everybody knows that when you close out a session, you go to goodbye. You have to make it known to that spiritual realm. I'm closing the door. I'm not leaving the door wide open. In Wiccan and various others, when they do the circle ceremonies, they close the circle.
Is that right? Is that how I do that for you? Okay.
Yep.
I'm giving you a heart on that.
That's right. So what doesn't happen enough when people talk about sleep paralysis is they wake up and they say, oh man, that was so scary. And nobody talks about closing that door.
Right.
But what they do talk about often, and it took me years and years and years to figure this out, that I thought the reason I was still scared a couple hours later, or when I woke up, or why I was scared the next night, or why I was kind of looking over my shoulder the whole day after I had a sleep paralysis experiences, it was just it's such an unnerving experience that
It is. It's
it's
unusual.
scary.
Yeah.
So you're just like, oh, I'm just like out of it today because I had sleep paralysis. But what a lot of people don't realize is there are things in the astral realm that can attach, they can piggyback. And so if they're piggybacking back into the physical realm with you and you aren't making a point to say, go away, like you are not welcome, like go away. And
Yeah.
there's a way that a religious person would do this that would be different than a non-religious person would do this. You know, a Christian or a Catholic would pray, or they would pray the name of Jesus, or they would close spiritual doors. And there's rituals and different things that other people do when Native Americans bring in the sage, and there's different things. But whatever your method is, the fact is that if you wake up with one of these experiences, some sort of closure needs to be done, because that uneasiness that you feel through the rest of the day might not just be because you're unnerved. It could be
because it changes your mood for the day too. I've noticed I become broody and moody, and she wants to know why, and I just don't want to go into the whole 3-hour dream.
yes.
Which seemed like it was 3
Yeah.
days. Okay, you're right.
Absolutely. And that's another way to test a dream versus astral. When you are in astral experiences all night, you can sleep 8-9 hours and you will wake up absolutely exhausted.
Yeah.
So that's another thing. And now I know that there's people that we're always tired, right? We live in a culture.
Right.
We're
Right.
always tired. So, you have to use your wits about you. It's not like, oh, I was tired today, I have a demon, like we're not saying that, but we're saying that
Right.
if you've got several of all of these planets aligning at once, and you're getting really good night's sleep, and your fitness watch is telling you, you got 4 hours of combined REM and deep sleep, but you are utterly exhausted to the point of not functioning, and you're having super busy dreams with tons of people in it, and you're interacting with all these people, and it's exhausting. It's a combination of all of these elements together that could maybe be an indication that these dreams are actually astral, out of body type of things. You're not just defragging your brain and getting a good night's sleep.
Yeah. So I think what you mentioned too, like sage and different things, a little, I guess, self acknowledgement too to what's out there too, that this has to stop. This is my thing. And that's kind of what we've done with houses or places, so to speak, in the past. 9 times out of 10 it works, not always, but I think maybe personally that's a good way to go. And I really agree with you on the goodbye aspect too, because I give a speech about Ouija boards. It drives me insane. I've people have got this urban legend thing attached to these Ouija boards, and I told them you could make one out of a pizza box, guys. It doesn't matter what you've done. Is like you said, you've opened a door to communicate, and if you do not shut it, or you're not very safe or aware about what you're asking to come in, this is why some things tend to take a left turn. That's all I've said. I've said just when we do EVP sessions, I am virtually doing the same thing. I go in and I say, hey, I'm Dan. I'm not here to move you on. I'm not here to judge you. I'm not here to ask you to leave per se yet, because I want to communicate with you and find out what you need. Do you need help? What's going on? Like I'm coming into someone's living room, type of deal. Always approach it with kindness first. But you are right. Before I leave, I say thank you. Thank you for talking to us. You have to stay here. You cannot follow any of us home. You have to stay here. And that's my version of goodbye. And you were right. And if there's been a few times we forgot to do that, and I am going to speak very candidly, look right into the camera to you paranormal people and tell you, because I know some youngsters out there who are doing YouTubes and operating and doing this stuff, that I've had some things follow me home. And my wife was not pleased, who does not have much of paranormal insight, but she's had a few things happen, including seeing someone stand over me. I think that was more angelic than anything else. But listen to me. Tell them they need to stay where they're at. They cannot follow you home. If you feel that something's in your car or something's at your house when you get back, maybe say a few prayers, do what you got to do to cleanse your area, as Vicki was talking about, there out loud, whatever works for you. And hopefully that'll do the trick, because if you don't, like she said, if you don't say goodbye, you don't put that closure to it, you're inviting them to attach. And maybe you do have things start to go a little left, and maybe things are happening because of that. And that's where I leave my expertise at that doorstop. And then I call people that I know, that it took years to find people that weren't phony baloney and that I trust and do the real stuff. And it gets a little edgy, sometimes when this stuff happens. So here, this leads to my next question. This flows into my question is, how do you get these types of things to stop?
Yeah. So my entire sixth chapter of my book is all on who are these things targeting? Why?
Right.
Am I vulnerable? What door have I opened? And how to get rid of them? And so the thing that I suggest with all the people that call me, and I've had a lot of people contact me and say this really, really worked, is in the book I call it a prayer mapping exercise, but it's really just a journaling exercise. And so what I tell people to do is, you need to find the source. Because let me just specify too, the people that are contacting me, there's two different kind of groups of people that travel in these paranormal circles. There's the people like you that are investigating, and then there's the people that are targets, right? So the people that are being targeted and are having all of this sleep paralysis and all this paranormal stuff, and they don't like it and they want to get rid of it, those are the people that come to me. Why are they after me? How did this start? What did I do? And so a person could spend years trying to figure out the one open door. And sometimes it's more than one open door, so it gets complicated. But if you go to church, they're going to tell you the obvious things. What did you do? You were a bad person. You looked at porn. You played with the Ouija board. That's the stuff you're going to get from them.
Right.
So what happens if you have never done those things? Or this is kind of where the theology breaks down. If someone did those things in their past and they genuinely repented and asked for forgiveness, then they shouldn't still be being attacked for that. And so what do you have to tell? I'm talking to pastors now. What do you have to tell people? Once you exhaust that's not what opened the doors, how are you going to help the people in your congregation that are being harassed by this? And it's not because they've dabbled with all these things you think they're dabbling with. And this is a big issue with me, having gone to a Bible college and having studied the Word. And I'm getting ready to wrap up anthropology course with Dr. Judd Burton on biblical demonology. I've been up to my eyeballs in 19th and 20th century biblical demonology, and the church has got to have some better explanations than you have a dirty mind and they came after you because you thought dirty thoughts. Like, we've got to be more sophisticated than that, because the things that are out there are more sophisticated than that. And so praying to the source or finding the source, because like I said earlier, it could be genetic. It could be a family line.
Right.
It could be doors that were opened by ancestors through Freemasonry or various generational Satanism, where rituals have been done and the entire bloodline has been, they've given the invitation on your behalf for these to interact with these beings, because they're,
you just mentioned something that's close to me. I'm a Blue Lodge Freemason. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And the thing of it is, a lot of the stuff was happening way before it runs in the family. It's an interesting tie, because we're aware here in Michigan that there's different sects of Masonry, and I don't think the world really knows. They cum it all in one swimming pool and think that these people are acting out over here, so that means you're doing this stuff too. And it's like, no, we distance ourselves very far from a lot of that weird stuff. Which is interesting you mentioned that, because we have classes on mysticism and allegory and things that we talk about, and as it stands, and I'm transparent, as a Mason, that they were enthralled that once I joined, they found, hey, Dan's the paranormal guy. And so I've ended up doing a few of the lodges, including ours. But there's some stuff mentioned in there that is very interesting, and it's very old. It's true. It's true facts. It's history. and it has some connections to, you know, these Illuminati things and all this other stuff. Not so much as the conspiracy people want you to believe,
Right.
but there are some things like, as you said, this, and I'm glad. I want to have you back on to talk about your biblical study and the stuff of that nature too, because it still is in tune with what we're doing. Because I've often said this isn't so much supernatural as it is super normal, and it's super normal. And you're right, the church over thousands of years has tried to find a place to put things that just don't make sense sometimes in their answer, because I don't think if they don't understand something, they've got to create an answer, and that's to put you at ease, or maybe to put them at ease. And I'm not trying to call the thunder down on me. I'm just saying that you're right. I'm with you. I think they need to come up with better resources and better answers. But in ancestry, I was going to ask you if that, as you alluded to twice in this interview,
Yep.
that what are they looking for? You know, like you said, ancestral genetics, knowing that I'm from 89% Dane, Northern European, Irish, which didn't know I was that.
Mm.
And then my mom's side, you know, which we found out we were Welsh. Didn't know that either. Just found that out that we were Welsh. And there's probably 1% Ojibwe, Native American from my great grandmother's side, and the rest is French Canadian. So, having said that, having given everybody my genetic information here on a podcast, I wonder somewhere in there, like you said, there's something that they're in tune with, they're looking for. Maybe I've experienced them coming for me, because June was convinced that I'm an abductee, and they still abduct me. I don't know how much of that is true, but I don't know. This gets weird when we get into these processes. It gets weird.
Yeah, it sure does. It sure does. So my speculations and kind of what I've been researching is not so much nationality so much as bloodline. So there's some important bloodlines that go all the way back to antediluvian times that I think are still at play today. So I'm talking about,
Well, we were all brought here, so whatever.
exactly, ancient bloodlines of Cain, ancient bloodlines of the Nephilim, ancient bloodlines of a Davidic bloodline, King David, etc. So when you're talking about people that are being abducted, or whether it's astral or it's UFO, when you're talking about they're curious about the bloodline, the genetics. In many cases, I think that there are people out there that know more about our family history than we do, because most of us, up until recently, with all this 23andMe and Ancestry.com and stuff, in the last 10 years, there's been sort of a push for people that are more interested in where they came from and who they are. But
right.
before that, a lot of people didn't know. I mean, you'd have to go to Washington, D.C. and go looking through archives and stuff. And it was expensive to find your that. So, but the royal bloodlines know who their ancestors are. They keep the ancestral records. And if you're part of some sort of a royal or ancestral bloodline, a Canaanite bloodline, a Nephilim bloodline, a Davidic bloodline, you might not know it, but the people that keep those records,
they
know,
certainly do. Yeah.
They know who you are.
Right.
And what I have found in a lot of the people that I've been researching is I'll ask, like, do you know anything about, your bloodline or whatnot? And it's interesting to me that, I got a lot of people coming to me, there's a lot of hype around this, but there's people around me saying, is it because I have Rh negative blood? Because I have that blood, is that why I'm being targeted? I had done some genealogical research about 10 or 15 years ago on behalf of my mom. I was doing it for my mom. And after much research, I found out that I was a direct descendant of Guillermo David, who was a French Huguenot who escaped France during the persecution, and he settled in Canada. And I found a guy online also related to Guillermo who had done a genealogical record all the way back to King David. And so Guillermo David went with David is typically someone's last name David, like Larry David, the comedian, the actor. And if your last name is David, chances are that goes all the way back to King David. That became the surname. And so when I was doing my genealogical record, I found out that I was directly related to King David through one of his obscure sons. It wasn't through Solomon or, Absalom or one of the ones that everybody's heard of. But so I wondered, well, is that why I've been targeted? Is that why they're, because you had mentioned something earlier, and that is that, and this might have even been before we started recording, that a lot of people that have had sleep paralysis numerous times or over the course of their life, they get very well versed in paranormal investigation or in psychic stuff or whatever.
Draws them right to it. Yeah.
Yep. And I talk about that a lot in my book. Kind of a theme of my book is transformation. And I have a Clive Barker quote in there. Clive Barker is a horror author and writer and, Hellraiser, we've all heard Pinhead and all that, right?
Yep.
And Clive Barker has this great quote. It's outdated, it's a dated comment, but I love it. He's talking about people who have their paranormal experiences, and all they do with it is go on the Phil Donahue show and say that they saw it. And he said these experiences are wasted on those people because they weren't transformed. And what's interesting and what I have found, and I'm not talking about people that just had sleep paralysis, one time, when they had jet lag or something. I'm talking about the people where it's happened over and over again since childhood, since 2-3 years old, over the course of their whole life. There's always a transformation in those people. Right. And it's either that they delve very deeply into some sort of psychic investigation, paranormal stuff. They get into astral projection. They get into Council of 8 or Council of 9. They delve into that because they're told in these experiences that you're a chosen one, you're gifted. And so they'll go in that direction. And then you've got the other people over here where it scares them. They have this whole reality now of a spirit realm and a seed war, and they cling to to a religious experience or to Jesus or to Christianity. And so, but in either case, this is what both of those groups have in common. They were spiritually transformed through the experience. And so what I think is, this is pure speculation. I know this is out there.
No, I think you're right, though, because I think that half you're talking about, they're so oblivious. Because of the fear gets the best of them. Or some of them try to come into this field and they're not quite sure what they're looking for. It's more of a thrill than anything else, but they always focus on that experience being what drove them into it. But then there's time I've worked with these people, and then they're so frightened to go into a building or a place to investigate, and then you see why. You just explained exactly why.
Yep, absolutely.
And they do themselves a disservice, and you can't force people to get past their own fear. That's something they have to tackle themselves. You cannot do that. You can't train anybody to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And fear, I talk about that a lot in the book as well, because that also goes back to Robert Monroe with the loosh. The loosh is the fear.
The loosh, yeah.
And this ties in too with the sexual stuff, because a lot of people think that loosh is just fear. And if you have terror, that these evil entities are drawn to that terror like a pheromone, right? And this kind of is the same sort of concept with the adrenochrome that we've heard about, that they thrive on this, like,
Man, you were really in tune with this. I'm digging this interview. You were awesome.
Thanks,
you were
man.
awesome. No, you're awesome. Oh my gosh, it's nice to hear you touching on things that I thought, well, am I the only guy that's really paying attention to this or listening to some of this stuff?
No,
I feel like I'm on the fringe, and you've hit every one of them that I bring up, because it's like a deer in the headlights. When I do a lecture, if I bring some of that up, they're like, you lose them, and I have to simplify it sometimes just so they understand. But that was perfect.
It's all related. I've done so many of these interviews where people said, oh, well, we got wildly off topic. We weren't talking about sleep paralysis. I'm like, we were. And this stuff is all.
It's all connected, right?
It is all connected.
It's all connected.
There's so many tentacles attached to this. It isn't just like, oh, I had a bad dream, or I had that lasagna before I went to bed. Like, this is what we're told. But with the loosh, the last point I want to make with that is, loosh isn't just fear. It is exaggerated, intense human emotion that they are drawn to. So it can be fear, but it can also be high levels of stress, drama, agitation. It can be the sexual stuff. Orgasm is strong dopamine squirting out emotion, right? It's also a pheromone. And I have had so many letters that start out, "Dear Vicki," shortly after my divorce, and then they start talking about sleep paralysis. And don't hear me saying that if you get divorced, you're going to get sleep paralysis. What I'm saying is these things are drawn to deep human emotion. So when you're
Yeah.
going through something traumatic, you're in despair, you're angry, you're in a custody battle, you can't sleep, you're in a prime position where they like to take advantage when you're vulnerable and when
Correct.
you emotion.
Correct. And that's why in an interview I did on the radio here years, being the Halloween guest every year, he used a soundbite that I said, sometimes I turn into the paranormal social worker. And that's exactly why, because not only those types of things will draw in that, which they think is negative, and it may or may not be, but you're discussing the exact same thing. And there's been some deep-seated emotion or some sort of trauma. That's a trauma for someone that goes through a divorce. I've been through one, and we parted as friends, but it's still a trauma. It was emotional.
Yeah.
And and then there's other things that happen. People are on drugs, and there's
Yes.
family turmoil. It goes on and on and on. And like you said, these things are drawn to that. And why I've said too, with young ladies, I wouldn't want to bring my daughter into anything till she's about 14 or 15, because it seems like the girls were a bigger target than the men. And you talk to like my daughter and a few others who had some dreams, they've had some sleep paralysis. And I wondered if you encountered that in younger girls.
So interestingly, because we're still just on the precipice of being able to talk about this stuff without being labeled schizophrenic.
Right.
And so what I have found is the people that most often contact me, this is going to surprise you, but it's the genre of people most willing to share their feelings. I get the most amount of mail from women in their 60s and 70s that have dealt with this their whole life and thought they were nuts, thought they were crazy, couldn't talk to anybody. Here's the thing, and I don't know if you've experienced this. The conversations that I have with the millennials and the Gen Zers about this, it's not the same. They're experiencing sleep phenomenon, but it's not ghosts and goblins and scary stuff. It's a different, they've changed their tactic. And I think that they've figured out with the new generation, because they're different than the Gen Xers and the baby boomers. You can catch more flies with honey than with vinegar. And so with the Gen Xers and the baby boomers, the modus operandi to getting our attention was to scare the shit out of us, right? And then keep us in silence, because that was
right.
we lived in a culture of silence where you couldn't talk about stuff like that. But now we're in a social media age where you can talk about anything, and you can talk about your sexuality, you can talk about your mental illness, you can talk about your paranormal experiences. And not only are you not crazy, but it makes you special, right?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
so now the type of sleep phenomenon that the younger generations are experiencing are more less ghosts and goblins and horror shows and more sci-fi. It's more metaverse, it's more reality shifting, it's more going into aspects of the astral realm that are more like fandoms than they are, what we would experience. It's like, I went to the Harry Potter universe, I went to the Marvel universe. And so they're kind of being taken on this wild amusement ride, which again, it's tricky, because there are so many lower vibrational, whatever adjective you want to ascribe to it. There are a lot of landmines in the astral realm, and there are a lot of wolves in sheep's clothing, and there are a lot of angelic, beautiful, like lights that seem so beautiful and wonderful and make you feel so good. And I always warn people, if you're taking it like from a biblical perspective, if we know that Lucifer disguises himself as an angel of light, then not every angel of light's necessarily going to help you out. But what I also tell people is every example in scripture of a human being encountering an angelic being, these were not evil beings. They were bearing glad tidings. In every case, it scared the crap out of them. They fainted. They had to be revived. They had to have coals touched to their lips. The most frequent thing we hear out of angels' mouths is fear not, be not afraid. So terror or orgasm, that alone is not the way to determine whether or not the entity you're dealing with is friend or foe. So we have to have more sophisticated ways of protecting ourselves when we're dealing with these things. And that's what makes me nervous about the younger generations, because a lot of the entities that are presenting themselves to the younger generations they're superheroes, and they're beautiful, and they're giving them powers and making them feel chosen and special. And sometimes that might be legit, but sometimes it could be a breadcrumb trail into the forest as well.
That's a very good, wise words to everybody to live on, that right there. And I would add in that she's right, because with the creation of everything, let me back up, because I almost did a whole Austin Powers thing there. Like, allow myself to introduce myself. So what I was trying to say, I had to back up on that. I realized where I was going, and it was not making any sense. In the aspect of creation, we do know that you have to have, the balance of the light and the dark. That's just the way it is. We've been taught that from, I think, the minute of our understanding. Whether you think we're originally from here or not, that's a whole other show. But she's right. And, I think that there's got to be a way somehow that we can figure out how to discern the good from the bad. And, I often give a soapbox moment on the shows and talk about what I think is like heaven and hell, or angels and Satan. And I think, it's almost entombed in us personally, because I've seen us as angels. I've seen us do the best of best. We've been just angelic. We've done great things for each other in humanity. I see it every day. There's still a lot of good in the world, despite what's happening right now. Okay. We know what's going on right now. 6 days of it, going into the 7th days. I don't want to get political, but the fact is, we know there's better things still happening. And on the opposite side of that, there's terrible things that happen. So we are the angels, and we're also Satan, because to hear what we can do to one another is absolutely horrific. And if you don't call that demonic, I don't know what you would call it, because we are the ones committing either the goodness or the atrocity. And I think in the universe there are beings, as you've stated. I don't think you've alluded to it. I think you believe this. I think I'm with you. I think I believe it too, Vicki, that there's these things, these beings, or whatever you may want to call these things, that this is what they're doing. And I think that the sleep paralysis is probably just one of many aspects of things that they're doing. And it could be, like you said, maybe connected to abductions of, I don't want to get crazy, of aliens, but it's certainly, if you listen to a few other people who have been on with George Nori, who I listen to quite often, which you're going to be a guest. You're going to be a guest on the show, or you're at a conference with them, right?
No, an episode of Beyond Belief. It's not out
Beyond
yet,
Belief. Okay.
Yeah.
Which is on Gaia, right? You can get
Yes.
that on Gaia. Okay. So make sure you go watch Vicki over there. That's cool that she's being on. I got off track. What I'm saying is that, there's something going on. And I think that there have been beings who have been in control, obviously, a lot longer than we are certainly aware of. We're the new kids on the block. We're the experiment. And I think when they watch the experiment going left, I don't know if there's laughter or if there's just shock, like, oh my God, it's hard to tell. But I think us becoming more aware mentally, I think in our age group, I know you're probably still a youngin'. I'm 60, and I'm just going to tell you, I think even some of the younger people, I talk more to some of the young people, they get it. There's still some young people who have their minds open, and they're open to the possibilities that we are not alone in any realm. I don't think this realm, the parallel realm, or whatever may take place, because I don't think I'm always talking to ghosts, Vicki. I don't always think I'm collecting voices of ghosts. I think sometimes it might be parallel beings. I'm not saying it's aliens, I wouldn't want George paying me a visit and be on Ancient Aliens or anything, but I'm just saying that His hair. What is his name? Cocaculus or Cocoloculus? I can never
Kaku?
get his. Yeah,
Michilio Kaku?
yeah. No, I know Michio. I'm thinking about George from Ancient
Oh.
Aliens. He's him into that crazy hair.
Oh, yeah,
His
yeah.
crazy hair. I had an opportunity to speak with him like 50 feet once,
Oh man. Oh man.
and he's all right. He's an all right guy. So I wanted to thank you for being on the program. I hope we addressed everything that you wanted to cover. Um, I mean, this is a very interesting thing, and I think as far as paranormal goes, you're in with the rest of us, and maybe some paranormal people should console you and talk to you, not console you, but consult is the word I'm looking for.
I'll take consolation.
Yeah, she needs some consolation. She's living in a hotel. Buy her book, will you?
You got it.
Good Lord. Where where can they find your book at?
Oh man. So my book is available exclusively on lamarzulli.net for all you Marzulli fans out there. He has published my book and he's been absolutely wonderful to me. You can also find me on VICKIJoyAnderson.com and you can find all my books there. And if you click on my book on that site, it'll just take you over to LA's if that's easier. And you can get me on Instagram at VICKIJoyAuthor.
I also found it on a thing called prophecywatchers.com.
Oh, yeah,
selling
yeah.
the book. Yeah.
Yeah,
So that's
yeah.
one of them I came across. So I put in to buy a copy. So I'm going to read it. I'm going to get me a copy and read it. And maybe I should try to get a copy from you. But if I run into you, I'll have you sign it.
Absolutely.
But I want to thank you for being here. And I know I did the stated questions, but hopefully I get a little off track. I try to keep this loosey-goosey, at least have a laugh or two. Take it serious, but not so serious we can't have fun, right?
I love it. I love it. It's been great. It is the topic is way too big to cover completely in an hour or two, but
Oh yeah, you'd need 3 or 4 hours.
I think we did a great job with the
I got more questions.
Getting the conversation started. But no, it's been great. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I definitely got more questions because you opened up a few doors, and I wrote down a few notes here and there. So once you've done you do your recording and you've done some different things and you do a couple other things, I'll have you on, like in a month or so.
Awesome.
Have you come back? We'll do part 2 of this program. And
fantastic.
I want to thank Michelle Freed, who brought you to me. Again, she's wonderful people. And any final thoughts or words for the audience?
Yeah, I think I would just say we've talked about this a little bit at the end. Test every spirit. That's 1 John 4, but I think it applies to people who read and don't read the Bible. We have to test every spirit, and we need to test beyond just our emotions or how we felt in that moment, because these things can influence our emotions. And if any of you are struggling with this or you've got more questions, you can go on my website or on Instagram. You can contact me either way. I'm open. I answer anybody who writes to me, I answer, and I do counseling phone calls if anyone wants to talk. So I'm available.
And I will put you in touch with her if you hit me up. And you can find me at unrestrictedparanormal.com or on Facebook under Southern Michigan Paranormals. That's my group, or SMP Investigations. And I'll send them your way. I'll definitely give them my 10 cents. Well, 5 cents. You got the other 5. Again, she's living in a hotel, guys. Buy her book. Seriously. I know I'm going to keep punching that joke. If it works, you keep slugging away at it.
That's right. Keep going.
But you've been on Paranormal Now, and we've been on with Vicki Joy Anderson. And I suggest you go find this book and you read it. It's going to answer a lot of questions. Just the short sections that I read touched base with a lot of things I had, and you covered a lot of questions I was going to ask you. So you beat me to it. I love it when a guest does all the talking, and all I got to do is let you roll, and I might intervene once in a while and share stories. But thank you so much, and you've answered some things for me. Everybody, this is supported by Henderson Castle, hendersоncastle.com, as well as unrestrictedparanormal.com. Also, Gun Barrel Coffee, gunbarrelcoffee.com. And least of all, Ghostorama. Go to Facebook under Ghostorama. And we thank you for being here. We should see you next week. I've got the Yeah. Ferris, the fam with us. This is a group, a husband and wife team that live here locally, and they do some great work. They're actually done some work on an unsolved murder case that I've been interested in a couple of years here locally. And she's got some intriguing information. So let's look for that show. But Vicki, have a great night and a great weekend. And I'll see you out there on, out there on George Norris program, Beyond Belief. I'm a big fan, and have a good night. Thanks for being here.
You too. Thank you so much.
Hey, no worries. Again, buy her book. She's living in a hotel, guys. Buy her book. Seriously. All right. Have a good night, Vicki.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye. And of course, that was Vicki Joy Anderson. And I want to thank you again personally for being here with me on Paranormal Now. And as I said, there's been some changes and some different things going on. I'm going to go solo for a while here on the podcast, see how it goes. And we have more guests lined up. We've got some investigations that SMP Investigations will be doing. So I'll talk more about that once we're back on with you guys live. And until next time, just happy hauntings. Keep your eyes up into the sky. And if you're strange noises in the forest, might be me, but I'm assuming it could be the dog man or Sasquatch. Hey, let me know. Drop me a line at Southern Michigan Paranormals on Facebook. Okay. And you know where I'm at here on YouTube. There's 100 ways you can find me. All right. You can find me everywhere. All right. You guys have a great night, a great weekend, and I will see you next week on Paranormal Now.